Tell them you pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow. Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for all that are here. We ask that you be with each and every one and their family as we go through the agenda tonight. Help us to make the right decisions. All these things we pray in your name. Amen.
I'd like to welcome our guest and visitors here tonight, and I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voted for the motion. All right, we have a consideration to approve the minutes you have in your package. The March 21st, 2013 council meeting minutes. Are there any changes or deletions? Yes,
Mr. Mayor, one change, or actually, and one clarification. The change is under 6 in the 10-minute public input. It's a typo. Sandy McGrew spoke regarding the Commission of Canton's future and the town hall meeting held by, and she had Councilman Bryan and Susan and I have talked about it, so it's actually Councilman Rush now. That's a change. The other is a clarification that I've discussed with Mr. Huffman, and Mr. Wood is in agreement, and it has to do with the way the pension wording is stated. Mr. Huffman stated it correctly he stated it the way it's written, but he later went on to clarify exactly how the pension for new employees works under the defined benefit plan. And I have provided to Susan a sheet. I thought she was going to distribute it here, but she didn't have it. I only have one. And basically what it says, it's the City of Canton defined benefit pension plan for employees hired May 1, 2013 or after. And the wording should be read, employees hired on or after May 1, 2013 will accrue pension benefits in the City of Canton's defined benefit plan as follows. The first 10 years will accrue at a multiplier rate of 1.25 per year. After 10 years of service, all additional years will accrue at a multiplier rate of 2.0, and employees will be vested upon completion of 5 years of service. And then I gave examples of 7 years of service, 13 years of service, 17 years, and 20 years, and 25, and 30. Susan can get that to him, but I believe Mr. Wood, and I know Mr. Huffman and I have spoken on the phone, that we're in agreement with the way this is written. The other implied, the way it was written in the minutes, that at the 11th year they would get a retroactive benefit back to year 1, and that is not the case. They do not. They start with a multiplier of 2.0 at year 11 and any year after that. And that was the only change or correction or clarification.
okay, are you suggesting that your wording be, this wording that's in the minutes regarding that matter be replaced with yours? Or yours in addition to? Or?
It's a clarification of what he has. You could replace it or just add it to it, because as Susan reviewed the tapes, she found his explanation of what was going to happen is consistent with my wording, but not consistent with the wording that he initially stated in the motion.
May I ask a question, please? If I understood what you said, Mr. Huffman, you mentioned 11 years, and I think our break point was exceeding 10 years.
Right.
So it would actually be 10 years and a day that the new multiplier would kick in. Would that be correct, Mr. Dyer?
it would kick in, but they wouldn't get any credit for that 11th year until they completed the 11th year.
Well, but you get credit, if I'm not mistaken, your credit is awarded on a prorated basis.
Okay.
So I think it'd be 10 years would be keep the 10 years plus a day would be keep.
Yeah, and we can change the wording. The conflict was that at that 10 year and 1 day, or into the 11th year, or after the 10th year, there was no retroactive payment for the first 10 years. They accumulate 1 1/4 per year for 10 years, and then starting with that first day on a prorated basis, they're now working at a multiplier rate of 2.0.
So would your motion be that we add that as an addendum or supplement to what's already in the minutes?
I think I'd allude to Susan, because she's listed to the...
I'll have to figure out what the best way to do that is.
Yeah, why don't we just bring these back at the next meeting after they can be fixed? Let's don't.
That's probably the best idea, yeah, just bring the minutes back for approval after we've worked on them and added to
However you
or
want to fix
changed.
them. But the details are going to be in the contract, so that's what it really matters.
Right. The only thing is the minutes.
Are wrong.
The minutes don't concur with the explanation of how it was to work. Isn't that exactly?
The motion is stating it incorrectly,
Yeah.
is basically what happened. So we can either just fix the motion and approve it. I mean, this is what he said, unfortunately, and so we can do a new motion, or we can just have an explanation, but it's the contract's where we're going to clean it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll bring this back to the next meeting for approval.
Okay, that's fine.
Anything else in the minutes anyone has? Okay. The next item, no 10-minute public input, folks.
Oh, we need to vote on minutes. No. Oh, you know.
We're bringing those back to the next meeting, yeah, okay.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Beresford has made a suggestion, I think, before the meeting, if it would be with your approval as the moderator. He felt like it may be appropriate for us to acknowledge the police chief and Lieutenant Hills and the job they've done on coordinating and introducing to the community our new police vehicles. They're admittedly quite impressive, and they represent, at least visually, and I hope for safety purposes, our police department. And if I might just say editorially that Chief Merchant has really brought a level of professionalism and vigor to the police department. Obviously, changes have been made there, and presumably for the better. But I think you see a level of professionalism that is approaching at least that everybody wants to see in our police department. And again, Mr. Beresford was generous in suggesting that there be a acknowledgement at the city council meeting for the good job Lieutenant Hales did in the coordination and acquisition of those vehicles.
I'd like for him to come up forward and just so everybody can see. We do have a fine officer here. And there was a lot of work put into the program to accomplish this, and just want to recognize that fact. The design on the vehicle is really unique and special. And I think that we have something to be very proud of. And thank you, sir. All right.
Lieutenant Hales is also a proud new papa.
Anything else?
Oh, we need
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the job y'all doing. Okay, you have in your package the February financials, simply just for your informational purposes. Is there comments or questions on those?
I have one question, and Nathan, I advised him in advance that I would ask this question, but it's under the municipal court fund. It appears that we budgeted a certain amount, and we may have a revenue shortfall as we proceed based on 5 months. Is this an accurate statement, or are we just behind in reporting what we've collected?
No, that is accurate.
Do you know what that projected revenue shortfall might be based on 5 months of the year?
It's probably gonna be around 20 to 30%.
Which would be close to $200,000.
That's correct.
Are we reasonably up to date on the transfer of funds from the municipal court?
Well,
The general fund?
we transfer funds to the general fund, in similar pro rata portion is whatever's been collected. We do that on a quarterly basis, but I think what Mr. Cummings alluded to is just the municipal court fund and its collections and percentages, not necessarily what transfer. We could technically do that at the end of the year.
Okay.
It's the actual collections in the municipal court fund.
It's just that it's indicating a shortfall in our revenue collections. Now, I don't know if this will be made up in other areas or not, but it is a significant amount of money, $200,000.
If you recall, well, if I'm not mistaken, we instituted, or there was instituted by the court, a new fine structure last year. So the projections for the year might have been a little bit aggressive, but there was no history to peg that to.
Is there a particular area that is down and from those funds?
No, not to my knowledge.
I mean, I guess I was thinking in terms of speeding tickets or
Parking violations.
other court fines or,
Well, I guess my concern, Mr. Mayor, was, and also Mr. Wood, is that if we're 200,000 short, this is transferred to the general fund, so does this create a problem? Or is this something that is manageable?
Anytime you lose, not being smart, but anytime you lose $200,000 in one area, you gotta pick it up in another.
Okay.
okay. Anyone else have a question, comment? Under old business, report from Mark Woodlard on the assembly room improvements. Mark?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood has asked me to give you a brief update on the meeting hall project. We provided the document to Mr. Patton. We've scheduled review time for the next 3 weeks, roughly till April 26th. That's when we'll run the first advertisement. We'll run the second one May 10th. We'll have a pre-bid conference May 14th, bid opening May 28th. Discussion of bids at the council work session June 6th, approval of bids to go forward with ratifying the contract June 20th, and then we've got a start date of construction July 1st with a finish date of September 6th. The scope of the project, I think a lot of you are aware of it. It's fairly involved, a lot of tedious work with lots of different areas in there. The big thing was the asbestos removal. We decided to take the approach to remove the whole ceiling, so we'll replace it with a new ceiling, new lighting, replace the existing sprinkler heads, adjust that system. We're going to remove and replace the whole HVAC unit that needs to be done, repair all the plaster walls, the trim. We're going to remove, restore, refurbish the pews, new council day, separate the attic. That's part of the problem. You noticed any deterioration in the wood in there. That attic space is left unchecked, but basically just a fabric, so that hot, humid summer air comes in and makes that very humid, and it's doing a lot of damage to the woodwork. So we're going to fix that wall and provide a barrier, insulated barrier to stop that from happening. We're going to insulate the attic, paint the entire hall, redo the ADA lift, relocate it to a new location, add some crosswalks up in the attic for ease of light installation, stuff like that, or light reinstalls. Refinish the floors in the hall, and then we've also added outside in the lobby area, reception desk, we're going to do that area as well. We've got a whole new AV system, council microphone system, council monitors, computer system, audio system, amplifiers, video systems with the capability for cameras to record the meetings, video head-end, projector screen, lighting tied into the podium, into the wall system, camera system, calling police if there is a situation, new podium sound system. One of the good thing that I think we're done is if you've been down there now, the way that they run the court, a lot of those desks are left laying around. So we've devised a couple of storage locations that are concealed. So we're going to keep the judge's desk. And so when we have counsel, we'll be able to take his desk, roll it, put it in a cabinet out of sight. And then we've got the clerk's desk to be able to roll it to another location out of sight. And then we've relocated the other 4 desks to the back of the sanctuary for the really public area.
Court clerk was describing or showing me some of what you were anticipating doing back under the balcony overhang, the very back wall, or front wall actually of the building, the back wall as you face it from the side of the building. And were you talking about some sort of cubicle construction there to
Yes.
place those solicitor?
Yes, we're taking those that really had an acoustical problem with the court proceedings, so we relocated those desks to the back of the hall. And what we've done is basically created a partition system that's probably as high as this, I think it's 3'6" high, so that we don't have to put in units. If we created rooms, then we would have had to put HVAC, and it would have been a lot more costly. So we basically just left it open air, and so they'll be acoustically isolated in the back of it.
Anyone else? Mr. Cummings?
One question, it looks like for 2.5 months, that's going to be under construction. Have we made plans to move municipal court upstairs here?
No, so we would move municipal court to one of the county facilities.
Okay.
Any others? If not, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Rush, Commission Fire Services Funding Study.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought this up at the council meeting last month, and the question was asked if they would include in the fire services study the use of volunteer fire people and if that would change the cost. I talked to the president of the company, and she said that they would be happy to include volunteer firemen in the staffing study or in the study, and there would be no additional increase in cost. So I reintroduced the motion to ask the city manager to enter into contract with the Ecological Planning Group to do a fire protection system feasibility study.
We have a motion there. Second. A second. Any other discussion? Mr. Cummings?
I guess we're proceeding with the option that the city is going to continue to own and operate all fire stations, because this particular planning group was looking at the expansion, or their proposal was to expand to 3 construction staff and equip 3 new stations. I think if we proceed with just that and looking at the one hybrid operation of the volunteers and staffing and a relationship, we still haven't considered 2 other options, which was, for example, and I'll just throw out the word consolidation and forget that one for a minute, and talk about the hybrid solution that I had suggested relative to us operating 2 stations, and nobody's denying the need for the 3rd station up there or the modernization of the 3rd station in the Laurel Canyon. But thinking out of the box, one of the things that I think we should very seriously consider is talking to the county, who has plans to replace station number 9, of possibly them building the station on our property in Laurel Canyon, and them moving the staff that they already have in existence and equipment. There may be some additional equipment needed, I'm not sure. And them doing that, which they have already planned, and then us contracting with them to service a particular area of the city, which they primarily service now, i.e. Laurel Canyon and Great Sky. If the county, and I don't know that the county would even entertain this idea, but I think it should be considered, If the county were to build that station, we would not have an $800,000 expenditure as the city. If they were to staff, and then I guess our estimate is around $650,000 to staff one, or 690 I used, and they were covering 1/3 of the area, we could possibly contract to pay them $230,000 a year to staff that, or towards the operating costs of that station, and have a defined area in which they could cover. That option would require a millage increase of about 1/3 of a mil, and on a $170,000 house, that would be approximately $23 a year. That has a lot of benefits to the city in terms of the consideration, because we would accomplish the objective of having a station in Laurel Canyon. We would even though we didn't operate it and we didn't equip it, we would probably have an ambulance stationed at that station. We could probably negotiate with them to do that. And we would only expend $230,000 a year, which would increase our budget by 1/3 of a mil. The advantage to the county is very obvious. They have intended to always build a station in that area. They would have a partner paying for a portion of the operating costs, therefore reducing the costs that they currently have. I think we're going too fast to look at ecological planning group just jumping in without having investigated the option that I just presented. I don't know that the county would even go for it, but again, we need to think out of the box and look at different ways of solving the problem. That would have no impact relatively on our current 2 fire stations, but it would have a significant financial impact on what this city would have to put forward if we looked at that type of option. So I'm not for proceeding to look at funding a particular method that is step one of a method that has been more or less rejected in a bond referendum. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Excuse me, yes. What was rejected in the bond referendum? The bond, period. It was not consolidation. It was never a question of consolidation. I wish you would stop pushing consolidation. We are a city, and we do not need the county hovering over us, and we do not need to have the continuation of consolidation. It doesn't make sense, and if we go down that road, some point in time, it will turn around and bite us, and it will not be a good program. So the motion on the floor at the current moment is, why not think out of the box, Mr. Cummings? Why not have experts come in and tell us how we might be able to fund something that would make sense? Mr. Cummings, get out of the box.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may respond, I'd like to read the study, just one paragraph of the project understanding. It is our understanding that the city of Canton is interested in increasing the level of service provided by the fire department through the construction, equipping, and staffing of 3 additional fire stations for a total of 4 operating fire stations. Notice that number 4. We already got 2 and we're getting 3 new ones. Their study would bring forth a proposal to close, if we do follow this proposal, to close one of our 2 current stations, which initially was proposed to be the downtown station. I think the entire proposal needs to be written to consider all sorts of objectives, not just one of the possible options. And as far as I'm concerned, a hybrid of where we contract services does not necessarily mean the word consolidation. And I don't know that the public rejected just the amount of money. All of the people that have talked to me, the constituents that have said they are glad that it failed, want us to go back and go back to square one and do a thorough and complete analysis of all options, consolidation being one of them, not the only one. And if you go back to the last meeting, I had 3 options that I suggested, and there are probably 3 more that could be thought of that haven't even been brought up.
You had 6 last year, and consolidation was the one you pushed, which you continue to push.
Mr. Rush?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner versus
If-
council.
If I'm not mistaken, at the last meeting, the mayor instituted a fire committee.
Yes.
So I would suggest that rather than Mr. Cummins try to do the study on his own, that he do his pontificating in his committee, and that we were going to launch these 2, the committee and this study, in parallel to look at all options.
That was,
Let me ask a question, Mr. Rush. Is it your understanding that this study would also include consolidation, or would it not?
No,
It would not?
no, my understanding was that this would look at the city developing the fire department, and the committee that you established would look at alternatives which would include consolidation. I want to leave consolidation out of this, and we can look at both. When we get both reports, we can look at that and make an evaluation.
Anyone else? Seems that trying to figure out if we haven't first ruled out consolidation, and Mr. Bishop, I don't think it's been, I think it hasn't been completely ruled out as one of the options, then I think it would be, I think once we rule that out, we got the county is sitting there really waiting on us to make a decision relative to the Laurel Canyon Fire Station, certainly, whether or not they're going to completely do away with their Station 9 or if they're going to have to build another one there somewhere. And so they are ready to spend the $800,000 or $750,000 to build the station if we, if consolidation, I guess, or even semi-consolidation, whatever it was Mr. Cummings was saying there, were a possibility. And to move forward with a lot of expenditures before we know whether we're going to rule that out. If we rule it out completely, then, that's one thing. But if it's still an option there, then we spend our money to build a station, and then, we won't ever recover that, even if consolidation were to occur later this year or next year or whenever. We wouldn't recover that $750,000. So, but that's just my thoughts. But anyway, you have a motion, I believe, on the table.
Yeah, the other question comment I would make is that I don't think there's anything in the thinking that says we couldn't jointly construct a station at Laurel Canyon with the county. That doesn't mean consolidation. It means a joint construction of a station. But if a county constructs a station there, I don't think it would affect. I'm not sure of this, but I don't think it would affect our city ISO rating. I think it would be a negative effect on the city ISO rating, or level one. But we do have.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Scott.
I wouldn't object to doing this if we limited it to the Laurel Canyon Station and the Laurel Canyon Station only in terms of construction and staffing, and considered the building or the building of the volunteer force in those 2 options. There's nothing wrong. We all agree that the Laurel Canyon Station, whether it's done by the county, whether it's done by us, it has to be done. I don't think there's a single person here that disagrees with that. But the way the project is written, it's written specifically along what was proposed in the bond referendum of building 3 new stations. And that's been rejected.
Anyone else? Susan, you want to restate his motion again?
Made a motion that
what I was
To make
confused
sure,
too.
I've got a lot of talking
You,
here.
well, you could just make the motion to commission a fire services funding study is what you have in the agenda.
To enter into a contract with Economical Planning Group.
Okay. So we will have to come back and approve the contract, Bob?
I think so.
Okay.
We don't have a contract yet, so.
Well, we don't.
I think the motion was actually to have Mr. Wood enter into it.
Yes, that was the motion.
Okay.
Assume it's this contract.
Plus the other consideration.
Plus the other.
That you mentioned, volunteer. Okay. Now, what was the price as it ended?
It was, yeah, it's $14,940.
Okay. So they threw the volunteer consideration in for that,
Yes.
right? Okay. Anyone else? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. All members voting for the motion with exception of Mr. Cummings. Voted no. Okay. So that's what we did. Discussion of Marietta Streetscape Construction Oversight Cost Proposals. Mr. Wood.
I would just report to council that City Engineer West is in the process of obtaining alternate quotes for the contract management, construction management oversight that was discussed at the last meeting. Hopefully, we can have a report on those quotes at our next council.
Anyone
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
My question is, how come we went down that road? This is a professional service that we're looking at. We do not have to go for bids or quotes or anything else. This is simple, straight up and down. This is a service. We will select the service that we want based upon the best input from the professional engineer that works for this city, who has done a yeoman job on looking at and developing what we want to have as that oversight. And he came forward with that information, and we do not have to go through a bidding process. These people came back, said, here's what we'll do it for, and that's what we should entertain. So I don't see why we can't go ahead and approve this tonight and get this project that has been going on. And I'd have to ask Mr. Goodwin, how many years has the Marietta Road project been messed around with?
Before I was here, I don't.
Okay, I still have the floor. Thank you. It's been 6-7 years. If you note that the memorandum that was passed to us from Mr. West, our city engineer, who did get a degree in engineering, did a lot of research on this, and he came up and he felt that he should ask for Arcadis to come back and sharpen the pencil, which they did, and we did say $20,000. So my point is, I would like to say, let's go ahead and move this project on down the road and get it done. Now, do I need to make a motion? I'll make a motion, and we'll skip that other process that we did 2 weeks ago, which is uncalled for.
Mr. Murdoch, 2 weeks ago, we had a vote on this to send it back for quotes. It's $137,000. Based on research that I've done, it seems high. The amount of money charged per hour of clerical work is $54 an hour. The amount of money charged for a project manager is $155 an hour, which, if you look at the number of hours planned, that is at a $322,000 rate per year, which is about 4 times what a project manager. It's outside. We had a vote of 4-2 to put it out for additional quotes. We should get those quotes, bring them back. Mr. Wood has told me that he intends to get additional quotes, and I think we should hold off until we do get those quotes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have one question, and my understanding is that after our last meeting when we voted, and as you know, I was opposed to this from the beginning because you don't expose somebody's prices. But after that, apparently we had Joby, our chief engineer, received a call from a contractor who wanted to bid on the project, which we didn't have any bids anyway. I mean, we hadn't gone out for bids yet. And then Mr. Cumming came in advocating for that same contractor. It seems to me, since he's the one that said we should go out for bids, and he begins advocating for a contractor, there's something fishy going on as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Mr. Rush, you're speaking from hearsay because you're not aware of the situation. Situation was, I gave it to an approved contractor of this council and suggested that he contact Mr. West because there would be quotes requested. That particular contractor I have zero relationship with, and then to imply otherwise is...
I was told he built your house.
Yeah, I have zero relationship with at this point in time. He did build my house. He's also been voted on by you to build the reservoir building. So I just don't understand what the difference is you approved him to do that job, but he's not available to do this job. It's something fishy to me.
No, it's not the question of my saying he's not qualified. It's not, I'm not advocating for any contractor.
I'm not either.
You are.
That is not true.
That's interesting. What degree do you have in engineering?
Ms. Bishop?
Don't go there.
Oh, he said he's done his research. I'd like to know what he has
Don't
and
go
when.
there.
Excuse me.
Mr. Mayor, I don't mind answering that question.
Okay, lighten up.
We need to still come back. I know we passed that, but I'm still going to be in control here. Go ahead and answer his question. Okay.
As a poorly positioned person, I've done this job. Probably wasn't the best choice of the people that selected me to do the job, but I have project overseen a $2.5 million building, which included parking and street paving. Not very good at it, I'll tell you that, but I do know the components, and I learned it from what is necessary to act in the basis of an owner. And if you look at the tasks that are required, they are primarily inspection tasks. The rate being charged seems excessive. And in any case where you have a possible excessive charge, we should look to others to give us quotations rather than just rubber stamping a dollar amount. Now, you talk about arguing about a $4,900 Heritage Park study for 15 minutes in a meeting, and yet we're ready now as a council to vote on, without even looking at another alternative, an expenditure of $137,000, and to me that's ludicrous.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, let's move on to the next item.
Well, there's a motion for what else?
I didn't.
No, we don't have a motion.
We didn't have a motion. Okay. Under new business, discussion on selection of committee member for the Urban Development Agency. Urban is supposed to be Redevelopment Agency, I think. But I just wanted to make sure we have a vacancy on that and solicit any suggestions for nominations from the council members or others that may want to serve. They know those that they want to serve on that committee. It's obvious this is a committee that doesn't meet very often and really hasn't met for some time. It basically was a vehicle for debt at one point, and that's pretty much, it still exists, and there's outstanding debt that this committee essentially is charged with. It's an agency. like Inc., it's an incorporation actually too.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think Mr. Justice wanted written notice in the paper or something else that said he was not.
Well, they can put it in the paper, he's the one that he did not wish to use. Now, he had been on this for quite a few years, as you know. And I guess the fact that it didn't meet very often was, you know, he just didn't.
Well, I talked to him, he was pretty upset that.
Yeah. So he was calm when I talked to him, so I talked to him too.
I'll probably talk to him after you talk to him. Justice said it again.
Okay. But just think about that, just send an email or whatever if you have someone you would like to nominate for that. I'll nominate them, and y'all can make the decision. Discussion of the Planning Commission recommendation for case number ZCA 1302-001, 2000 Town Mill Avenue, request to increase approved commercial area. Ian, you want to enlighten us on that one? I think we've talked about it a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a zoning condition master plan amendment request involving property at Town Mill, specifically 2000 Town Mill Avenue. They are requesting to increase the commercial acreage contained within those approvals from 2.35 acres to 2.73 acres and increase the square footage from 20,000 square feet to 23,500 square feet, with the stipulation this additional 3,500 square feet would only be used for professional office space. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this amendment.
Okay. Any comments, questions, motions?
We don't motion until next meeting.
Oh, that's right, we can't do that. Getting ahead of myself there. Gonna save Mr. Dillard another trip up here.
Always enjoy coming, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. Anyone have any other questions while they are here that you have? Okay, no questions? All right, we will bring that up for vote on the next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, just one.
Okay.
I do appreciate the documents here.
Well, if there's any other information you need, please let us know.
Will do. Will do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, discussion of the Planning Commission recommendation, case number CUP 1302-001, 402 and 403 Kimberly Way. The request is to operate a church in light industrial zoning.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. As you read, this is a request for conditional approval for a church at 402, 403 Kimberly Way. That's Canton, Cherokee Industrial Park behind the library. Planning Commission held a public hearing. They did recommend approval of the conditional use permit approval with the condition that this permit approval is only effective for the church in question making this application. If they move out, if another church wanted to move in, they would have to come in and ask for another conditional use permit approval.
Let me ask you, is that one building 402 and 403, or is that two
Yes,
suites?
sir. There's two suites. There's also another business that's located within that building out there.
There's another business in that building?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Cummings, you had something?
The only question I had is there are certain restrictions of what you can do in the vicinity of churches. Would this affect surrounding properties in any negative way by us approving having a church there?
Not that I'm aware of, because all of this is light industrial approved, and it's not going to affect any of the restaurants or anything of that nature as far as alcohol sales, that sort of thing.
So there wouldn't be a situation where somebody come in, want to use an adjacent property, and would say, well, you gotta be X number of feet away from the church.
Like a restaurant or something in another one of those suites?
Don't think the restaurants are not allowed in light industrial.
Okay. One question that I would have, I guess, is the condition on it, that it be operated by that church.
Yes, sir.
Can we do that, Bobby? I mean, you know, it looks to me like you can operate it as a church, you can operate it as a church regardless. And to limit it to one type of church or one single church, I question whether we can do that.
it's always a question really about whether conditional uses are only for the applicant or not. I've never really researched it, but
There was, if I might, Mr. Dyer, there was discussion at the planning commission meeting in regards to this. The staff's research into this specifically has shown that other communities which conditional use permit approvals are being made for churches and what a lot of people are calling storefront churches and retail shopping centers, things of that nature. They are putting a condition that this conditional use approval is for that applicant and that applicant only, instead of letting the conditional use approval run with the property in perpetuity.
And especially with this particular use, in light of the question Mr. Cummings had, 10 years from now, this church has gone out of business, and it's vacant. You'd want somebody to come back and look at what's around there at that point, or how things are developing at that point. So, I think that's why. And I think it'd be legally sufficient. It's a conditional use, and there's not a whole lot of law on those, but you can put whatever conditions you want on it.
It seems a little odd to me. I mean, it goes from the Etowah Industrial Drive Baptist Church to the Etowah Industrial Drive Methodist Church. Are they out of luck?
If that church moves out and another church wanted to come in, they would have to seek conditional use approval.
Okay.
And that's what we're seeing with other communities in Metro Atlanta in regards to this and other places across the country.
And this will be leased property, right? They're not.
Yes.
I mean, if they were owning it, I think that's what you're kind of, you'd want to be able to sell it if they own the property, but if they're just a tenant, that's a different ballgame.
They are leasing the property.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Then we will take that up at our next meeting as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members.
Thank you. Discussion regarding annexation of unincorporated islands surrounded by the city. Mr. Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do is read a paragraph from the GMA handbook on methods of annexation, just to state the situation. It said, municipalities with a population of 200 or more may unilaterally annex contiguous unincorporated islands. And unincorporated islands are areas completely surrounded by one or more cities. To be eligible for this type of annexation, the unincorporated island must have been such an island on January 1st, 1991. All or any portion of such an unincorporated island may be annexed simply by the passage of an ordinance by the City Council. The intent behind this authority is to allow cities to alleviate voting and service delivery issues caused by such areas. Now, with that description, I know that Woodstock in 2010 annexed their last unincorporated island in their city, and I have asked Mr. Patton to look at the map of Canton to see what areas qualify and to see what impact that would have on the city. One thing, it would make our map a little cleaner. He has not completed that study yet. As soon as he does, and he'll bring it to us with whatever the impact will be and what areas would be involved, and then the council can make some decisions then.
Does that include financial impact you're talking about? The cost of delivering the services versus the
Well, I think
taxes? we would get back?
typically now, if it's an unincorporated island and it's surrounded by city, it's getting the city services. I mean, it's our police that will be going past them, it's our fire department that'll answer first. Because I don't think if we got a 911 call from one of these islands that's totally surrounded by the city, I don't think they're going to really know who's who anyway. So I think these areas are probably already getting city services, and I really, from initial talks with Mr. Patton, there aren't that many, so it's not going to have a major impact. I mean, there's a lot of areas that are unincorporated within the city, but they are not contiguous.
Did you ask?
Mr. Mayor, council members, we would include some information in regards to expenses and revenues involving these properties and that sort of thing. We had done this work about 4 or 5 years ago, and we're having to go back and recreate and re-verify some of the areas in regards to this issue of the unincorporated islands. And I've got to go back and recheck some of those expense revenue numbers that were produced at the back when we did the original look into this issue.
I suspect that some of these are vacant, some of them are probably improved properties, right?
Yes, sir. It's a combination.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly see the benefit long-term and even short-term on straightening up some of the boundaries, but I have always felt that it's our doings that we created the problem. It wasn't the property owner, and I really couldn't support taking somebody in against their will, but I could support a program maybe where it may take some time and that we contact those property owners and see if they wish to come in, because I don't know that anybody has done that, actually. And see, there may be quite a few of them, once he gets his list, that would want to come into the city. And, but I think since we created the problem, I'd hate to drag someone in against their will and say, come on in here, we get to charge you taxes now. It's just.
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Patton, just a theoretical question. Let's take an island that is in the middle of a planned community development, and that island happens to have a mobile home on it. How are you going to bring that in without changing the zoning of that particular island? I assume you're going to take all of those factors into consideration.
As a response, Mr. Cummins, that would come in as a legal non-conformance based upon our current zoning.
Could that property be transferred to another owner?
Sure.
With a mobile home there, it could?
Yes, there's
Legal
nothing
non-conforming.
in regards to our regulations that says the legal non-conformance ownership cannot be transferred.
Do you think they would be due any compensation in as much as a legal non-conforming use would certainly, in my opinion, diminish the value somewhat, as opposed to maybe another value? I guess you'd have to bring them in at a higher zoning value than what they had.
It's probably, if it's a single mobile home, it's probably a non-conforming use in the county as well. But yeah, it would.
Could be. Unless it's a real old one, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments? Okay. City manager's report you have in your package. I think everyone has hopefully taken the time to look at that. Under the mayor's report, I would just like to announce that the first meeting of the future commission will be the April the 8th, the week, I guess it's following Monday, next Monday coming up, at 6 o'clock here in the council chambers. And hopefully they will begin to organize themselves a little bit to get started on this process of hopefully creating a vision for the city. Let's see, yes. Oh, one other thing I want to do, I would like to ask Mr. Rush, Mr. Cummins, and Mr. Goodman if they would serve on a committee to help establish some policies for proclamations. I mean, we've had some requests for some proclamations. Sometimes we have quite a few, and there's really no harm in most of the proclamations, but other than maybe the diminishing of the importance of those a little bit in some cases, but certainly not all. But I think we need some sort of guidelines as to, we want to proclaim this someone's day, what does it take to do that, this sort of thing. And so if y'all would work to try to develop some general guidelines, that would be helpful. And I think our clerk, who gets requests fairly often, something like that, would have a better feeling about how we respond to those. That's all that I have. And we do have an executive session to discuss, I believe, litigation and also real estate, I believe. Was it?
One point, could I come back to something on the city manager's report?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
Because I had a question there of Mr. Wood, is that when we were talking about water and sewer rates, the assumption was made that we would have to fund the entire annual debt service, which would be about $400,000 because of our expansion or improvements in the waste treatment plant. Could we get, before we decide that, an analysis of where we are currently on water and sewer rates relative to, are we over collecting or expecting to collect more than we need or less than we need, so that the rate increase that we do have to have is justified by not just the amount we have to borrow, but whether or not we have a surplus collection at the current time.
Yes, sir, I understand your question, and we'll plan to have that available to you whenever we have a work session and present all that information to you in a comprehensive fashion.
Yeah, in theory, if I might just extend a little, if we currently are collecting $500,000 a year more, then, and I don't think that's the case, but if we are collecting $500,000 more than our expenditures on a current basis, we wouldn't have to raise the rates at all in order to fund this expansion. Conversely, we might be $200,000 less than what we need.
I understand, you want to know what level of positive cash flow we might be going to be able to incorporate that into consideration. Okay.
Exactly. Thank
I
you.
don't think you'll find it to be much, but we'll certainly.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I just think we ought to look at it.
Sure.
Motion to go into executive session. Motion to go into executive session for litigation and real estate. Okay. All those in favor, aye?